Evening all, it's just me again. I thought that today I would share my top 11 films that I own on DVD. Now, these might not be my top 10 films, but the top 10 films I own on DVD. Some of these are definitely still in the top 10, so without further ado, let's begin. So, first I've got Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It was created and released in 1975. It was the first Python film of a lot. It stars Monty Python, John Cleese, Graham Chapman, Terry Gilliam, Eric Idle, Terry Jones and Michael Palin. And it's based on the legend of King Arthur. It's a Mickey take, it's definite satire. It's a musical sing-along as well. So basically, King Arthur and his men, Sir Lancelot the Brave, Sir Galahad the Pure, Sir Bedivere the Wise, and Sir Robin the quite not as brave as Sir Lancelot, go on an adventure set by God to retrieve the Holy Grail. Highlights of the film: definitely the French Taunter scene, in which they approach the castle they believe the Grail is in, only to be greeted by a very rude French soldier who insults them with ridiculous phrases like, "I fought in your general direction, and your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries." It's as strange as it sounds. Second, I've got Jonathan Demme's 1991 classic horror thriller, The Silence of the Lambs. Jonathan Demme, who passed away last year, won just about everything that could possibly be won for this film. It features Jodie Foster, who plays Clarice Starling, an FBI junior agent who's sent to interview a cannibalistic serial killer, Anthony Hopkins' classic character Hannibal Lecter, in order to try and catch an even newer deranged criminal called Buffalo Bill, who skins women. It's absolutely fantastic. However, Lecter, being the twisted mind that he is, will only reveal information if she reveals information about her inner demons, as he calls quid pro quo. It's an absolute fantastic classic film, and both of these actors have been immortalised due to this film. I highly recommend, for anybody who hasn't seen it, The Silence of the Lambs is a definite classic. Third, we've got 1968's musical Oliver by Lionel Bart. It's just amazing. The music, the wisdom, the wit. Charles Dickens' tale has been brought to life in this. It's about an orphan boy who runs away from the workhouse and joins a gang of pickpockets, but soon discovers there's more to pickpocketing than meets the eye. The highlights of the film: the music, of course, and definitely Ron Moody, who plays Fagin, and Jack Wilde, who plays the Artful Dodger. Those two work really well and bounce off each other. It's a definite watch if you haven't seen it. And when it comes back to theatres, I will be watching it. Next, we've got Tim Burton's 1992 Batman Returns. Now, not actually my favourite Batman film. My favourite Batman film is the 1989 Batman film with Jack Nicholson as the Joker in it. However, this Tim Burton film is fantastic as well. It features Michael Keaton as Batman, Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, and Danny DeVito as the Penguin, Oswald Cobblepot. And he is the highlight of the film, definitely. He plays it with such a gothic, gruesome mix. And the film is about Penguin, who as a baby was dropped in the water and left to fend for himself among a family of penguins, soon rediscovers Gotham and plans to take revenge on it later on in life. It's got such a dark, gothic tone to it, you can't help but not enjoy it. Tim Burton works really well in it, and it is an absolute classic for superhero lovers, so check it out. Next, definitely the most controversial on the list, another Monty Python film, The Life of Brian. Still banned in 3 different countries because of its religious satire and blasphemy, so they say. I personally see nothing wrong with it, but it's about the story, it's basically a piss take on the story of Jesus. In it, Brian is visited by 3 wise men who believe they're visiting Jesus, but they're not, they're visiting Brian. And he becomes sort of the Messiah. However, he's very reluctant to be the Messiah. And the film is just full of crazy characters, including Brian's mother, Mr. Cheeky, the head of the Roman centurions, and especially Pontius Pilate, played by Michael Palin, whose witticism and pronunciation of words provides some of the greatest improvisation ever seen in comedy. Life of Brian, I highly recommend to anybody who hasn't seen. It was released in 1979 and was funded entirely by George Harrison of the Beatles, who said, even if the film flops, it was worth it because I want to see this. Next on the list, the iconic prison story, The Shawshank Redemption. This film was released in 1994. By Frank Darabont was the director. It's based on the novel by Stephen King. It's about a man, Andy Dufresne, who's this man here, played by Tim Robbins, who is arrested and put in prison for a crime he didn't commit. While in prison, he meets Red, played by Morgan Freeman, and the two become close friends. It tells a story over years of being in the prison, how life becomes of you, and how Andy's intelligence gets him quite high in with all the wardens. He soon discovers what goes on with the wardens and vows to put a stop to it and get out of prison alive. The film, once again, won just about everything and is sometimes called the greatest film that ever lived. So it's a very high standard. The highlight of the film is definitely Morgan Freeman as Red. Originally, they were against casting him. They actually wanted Liam Neeson. If anybody else in the world played Red, the film wouldn't be worth watching. Morgan Freeman is phenomenal. The next film on my list is the 1988 classic Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Created as the first real popular film of Touchstone Pictures, set in 1947 Hollywood, where FBI investigator Eddie Valiant, a Toon hater, is forced on a job to help find out what's going on in Toontown, which is the neighbouring valley in which all the cartoons who work in Hollywood live. And Roger Rabbit, who's voiced by Charles Fisher, he's questioned for a crime he didn't commit, involving the murder of Mr. Acme, who owns Toontown. The highlight of the film is, Jessica Rabbit, his hot wife, and Christopher Lloyd's Judge Doom, who's the villain of this film. Especially the ending scene, I think, is so well done. How they really brought him to life, Judge Doom. He's a classic villain, and this film is amazing. It was also the very first time Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse ever appeared together on screen. And probably the last. Next on the list is the original 1993 Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park. It stars Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, and especially Sir Richard Attenborough, who plays John Hammond, the founder of Jurassic Park. It's about a discovery of an island in which dinosaurs are being genetically created in order for theme park use. Of course, things don't go to plan. Highlight of the film, other than the amazing soundtrack. The highlight of Jurassic Park. I like the bit with Clever Girl where Robert Muldoon is taken out by the dinosaur he trained. It's just the way he pronounces Clever Girl. Or, obviously, Dennis Nedry, the villain in the film, played by Wayne Knight, who is such a slob, you can't help but laugh at him. It's thanks to him you'll never visit a dinosaur theme park. Next on the list, Peewees Big Adventure. Quite a obscure one. You're probably wondering why it's in French. I bought it in France. Quite an obscure one for English audiences, but Pee Wee Herman is definitely a character Americans know and love. Paul Rubens played this character on Saturday Night Live quite often. In this classic caper from 1985 was the very first time Tim Burton and Danny Elfman did something together, so you can thank this for future Tim Burton and Danny Elfman projects. Pee-wee's bike is stolen by somebody, and it encourages him to go on a trek halfway around the world, halfway around America to Texas to find it. Highlight of the film, Large Marge, where he gets picked up by a truck driver who, let's just say, will scare you shitless. Trust me, it definitely got me. A classic film, and definitely one of my favourites. I love it. Next, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. The second Austin Powers film. I much prefer it to the first, simply because of its additional characters and the way it's set. Starring Mike Myers as Austin Powers and Dr. Evil. This film is about Austin, who has to go back in time in order to stop Dr. Evil, who has also gone back in time. His aim, to steal Austin Powers' mojo, aka his sex appeal, in order to weaken him in the future. Highlights of this film, Fat Bastard. The Scottish fat man who is responsible for stealing the mojo. He's just a very funny character. He's this huge fat bloke. Also what would later become the voice for Shrek as Mike Myers' inspiration. Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, released in, I believe it was 1999, but I'm not sure. Might be later, I'm not sure, but classic James Bond parody. And finally, The Blues Brothers from 1980, featuring John Belushi, the late John Belushi, and Dan Aykroyd, who you might also know from Ghostbusters. This film is about two brothers, one of which spent time in prison, the other who was on the outside. They used to be famous blues musicians, however Jake was put away. So they later go and visit their local orphanage where they grew up. However, they soon realise that it will be shut down unless tax is paid in 11 days. Their mission to get their old band back together and perform one final show while avoiding the police, Nazis and cowboys is very difficult. But it features musicians like James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, while also having amazing legendary actors like Carrie Fisher, Twiggy and John Candy in there as well. Best bit of the film, I think the music is great, especially when Cab Calloway does Minnie the Moocher right at the end of the film. I love that. In the Blues Brothers band is Matt Guitar Murphy, Willie Two Big Hall, Steve the Colonel Cropper, Donald Duck Dunn, Mr. Fabulous Alan Rubin, Tom Bones Malone, Magic Murph Dunn. I think that's the whole of them, but I'm not sure. So if I've missed any, I do apologise. That's the Blues Brothers. Well, there you have it, my top 10. If you have enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and share. If you haven't enjoyed this video, go away. I'm only joking. I will see you in the next video. Thank you.